Father God, I just ask your blessing upon our time and this word today. And Lord, this is a difficult subject to deal with. There's a lot of concern that I have in teaching it too, because I want people to truly understand how close we are to the coming of the Lord Jesus Christ, how close we are to the Antichrist being revealed. And I believe, God, that your scripture teaches we are out of here before the Antichrist comes on the scene. That's the good news. But the bad news is things are getting worse. And so I pray, Father, that you would just be with me as I teach. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. Amen. The continent of Europe was named after the Greek mythological goddess Europa. She was the beautiful daughter of the king of Tyre, Agenor. Zeus was the king of the gods, and he first noticed Europa as she was gathering flowers by the sea. He immediately fell in love with her. Zeus transformed himself into a magnificent white bull and appeared at the seashore where Europa was playing. The great bull walked gently over to Europa and knelt at her feet. Europa was so impressed with the bull that she placed a garland of flowers about his neck and dared to climb on his back. With Europa sitting on the back of the bull, suddenly the bull takes flight and flies over the sea, abducting Europa. Once on the island of Crete in the Mediterranean Sea, the bull reveals his true identity. There, Zeus casts off the shape of the white bull and returns to his human form. And under a cypress tree, he made Europa his lover. Europa became the first queen of Crete and had 3 sons by Zeus. At last, Zeus reproduced the shape of the white bull and the stars, which astrologers refer to as one of the constellations of the zodiac, called Taurus, the Latin word for bull. As for Europa, after her death, she received the divine honors as Queen of Heaven. So Europa, who rides the beast, is portrayed all over Europe. In 1945, it was on a 5 Deutschmarks banknote in Germany. In 1979, in a painting on the Berlin Wall in Germany. In 1984, in a British stamp commemorating Europe's second parliamentary elections. In 1992, in a German EQ coin, which came before the euro. On a painting at the airport lounge in Brussels. On a German telephone card. On the back of the new 2 euro coins in Greece. The woman, Europa, who rides the beast, is the symbol of the continent of Europe. In the book of Revelation, John the Revelator says he saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. Those are the words of John in Revelation chapter 17, beginning at verse 3. The beast with the 7 heads. This is what you got to picture in your mind now. The beast with the 7 heads and 10 horns. That's what John saw. Represents the Antichrist and his political alliances that were against the true believers of Christ. The woman riding the beast represents a religious system that identifies itself with Babylon. It speaks of the time of the Great Tribulation when the Antichrist is ruling over the world and persecuting and martyring believers who do not conform to the religion of the whore who rides on his back and is drunk with the blood of the saints. So the picture I want us to get in mind is, here is Europa riding on the back of a white bull. Europa riding on the back of this bull is the symbol of Europe. And John talks about a harlot riding on a beast. And that beast is the Antichrist, and the harlot is going to represent false religion, the false prophet. Now, I want to get into some familiar territory with you because it's important that we begin where we begin here. That sounds like something that Harris would say. But Kamala would come up with that. Anyway, we talked a little bit about this last week, and certainly we talked about ancient Babylon in weeks in the past, but we have to begin here, and so we will. It's the despot of ancient Babylon. The ancient city of Babylon came from the Hebrew word Babel, meaning confusion. The city was built by Nimrod, and it was the beginning of his kingdom. That's important to understand. Nimrod has a kingdom, and he is the leader of it. It's the beginning of his kingdom, according to Genesis chapter 10. The prophet Micah designates Babylon as the land of Nimrod. Nimrod means rebel. And it fitted him well as he was a man in rebellion against God. Not only was he a builder of cities, including Nineveh of Assyria, also built the city of Babylon, but he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Nimrod was the great-grandson of Noah, but he rejected the God of Noah. Some would say he did so because of the worldwide flood that destroyed everyone on earth except for Noah and his family. He and the people of Babylon feared another great deluge. The people cast God far from them and chose as their sovereign Nimrod, son of Cush, son of Ham. Isn't it interesting? We talked last week about the son of Ham as being Canaan, and then Canaan had a son by the name of Sinim, where China comes from. So now we're talking about another son of Ham, or in this case, a grandson, Nimrod. So Nimrod himself was a worshiper of the sun, which is opposite of the storm clouds that caused the rain and brought the great deluge. Now there's a Jewish legend. This is not in Scripture. I think you would understand that. But there's a Jewish legend about Nimrod. And this is what he's saying to the people in this legend. Let us build a high tower, as lofty as the overtop, or as lofty as to overtop any flood, and so strong as to resist any fire. Yea, let us do further. Let us prop up the heavens on all sides from the top of the tower, that it may not again fall and inundate us. Now, this is kind of interesting how they're thinking here. Then let us climb up into the heavens and break it up with axes and drain its water away where it can do no injury. So they want to stop the rain from coming to create another flood, so they're going to take axes, I guess, and chop away at the clouds. At the summit of our tower, we will place an image of our God with a sword in his hand, and he shall fight for us. Thus we shall obtain a great name and rule over the universe. The influence of Nimrod was great. So we called for a tower to be built in the land of Shinar that would reach the heavens. The word Shinar means country of two rivers, and was most likely located in modern-day Iraq, the rivers being the Tigris and the Euphrates. Scripture says, they said to one another, people of Babylon, come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had bricks for stone and asphalt for mortar. It is of interest to note that the word translated brick here in our text is the exact same word used in the book of Exodus to describe what the Hebrew children used for construction when they were slaves in Egypt. Now, they are using bricks again, along with asphalt, to build this tower. Since Nimrod was a worshiper of the sun, so the people became worshipers of heavenly bodies like the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets. They created the signs of the zodiac and used the heavens as a means of foretelling the future by developing horoscopes and studying astrology. The tower was called a ziggurat and was designed as a circular stairway. So get the picture, a circular stairway which people would climb to get closer to their heavenly gods. They also believed that these planets and stars were alive and their gods could be sent from heaven and come to earth by means of the tower. So they're building this circular tower. They can walk up this circular tower. They can get closer to their God, but the gods can come down and meet them there as well. Get the picture? Nimrod, through the Tower of Babel, set up for himself a one-world dictatorship as Babel was the beginning of his kingdom. He also set up a one-world religion through astrology and the occult. Alexander Hislop states in his book, The Two Babylons, all false religion can be traced back to Babylon. That's true much more of just the things we're talking about, like nature worship, worship of the sun and so forth. All false religion can be traced back to ancient Babylon. The Genesis text tells us what happened next. So I'm going to read now Genesis chapter 11. This begins in verse 5. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language. And this is what they begin to do. Now, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us. The word us should be capitalized there, the you, in other words, because it's talking about God. Come, let us go down and confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore, its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the languages of all the people, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of the earth. The word Babylon is of significant importance in Scripture. Next to Jerusalem, it is the second most mentioned city in the Bible. Jerusalem, number 1, Babylon, number 2. The word Babylon symbolically represents a one-world government and a one-world false religion under a despot who controls the world. The name Babylon represents everything God hates. Now listen to this, because it really relates to where we are as a nation. God does not want borderless nations, nor does he want everyone speaking the same language, nor does he want people worshiping his creation. God knows when the time comes for a universal language, a call for borderless nations, and the popularity of nature worship, that this will lead to the rise of another despot. Understand that? You see where we are today as a nation with Biden?
Yeah. We're in trouble.
Scripture refers to him, that's Nimrod, as to the one who's going to be the despot of this one world religion, refers to him as the Antichrist, who will come out from among the nations and with the help of the false prophet. So get the picture now. The Antichrist, the false prophet. What do we read in the book of Revelation, where the false prophet or the harlot was sitting on the back of the beast, who's the Antichrist? So they're going to blaspheme the name of God. They're going to martyr God's saints and will force people to bow before the Antichrist and worship him as God. And 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. They will serve and honor him through the New Age religion and its occult practices. Nimrod is the first type of Antichrist mentioned in the Scriptures. So having understand Nimrod and his whole goal, we'll get back to that in just a little bit. I want to talk about the dream of Nebuchadnezzar of Neo-Babylon. You've heard this story from this class, and you've read it, but it fits in with where we're headed. After meeting Nimrod, the next important person in the history of Babylon was King Nebuchadnezzar. He totally rebuilt the city and made it one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. He set out to conquer the then known world and first invaded Judah, the southern kingdom, in the year 605 BC, taking the most promising young teenagers captive for training to serve in his kingdom. And one of those teens was named Daniel, who had a special relationship with his God. One night, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream of a statue whose head was of gold, whose arms and chest were of silver, whose belly and thigh were of bronze, and whose 2 legs were of iron, with feet and toes of iron mixed with baked clay. A stone was carved out of a mountain without hands and struck the image at its feet, crushing it, and the rock filled the earth as a kingdom that will never be destroyed. Nebuchadnezzar was deeply troubled by the dream and could not sleep, so he called for his wise men, enchanters, astrologers, sorcerers, magicians, to not only reveal the dream, but to give its meaning. They all told him, "Tell your servants the dream, and we will interpret it." The king refused to reveal the dream and threatened to have them cut into pieces and their houses burned to the ground if they did not tell him what he dreamed and its interpretation. The astrologers told him, "There's not a man on earth who can do what the king asks." This made the king very angry. Plans were made to have all the wise men in Babylon executed, which included Daniel and his friends. Once Daniel learned about his fate and that of his friends, he urged for mercy from the God of heaven. During the night, the mystery of the king's dream was revealed to Daniel in a vision. Then Daniel praised the God of heaven. Daniel was given permission to come before the king and reveal the dream and its meaning. He told the king that it was the God of heaven that revealed to him what he would say about the dream. He then described the dream and gave its interpretation. "The head of gold is you, Nebuchadnezzar." Remember this image now. "The head of gold is you, Nebuchadnezzar. After you will arise a kingdom inferior to yours. Next, a 3rd kingdom of bronze will rule over the whole earth. Finally, there will be a 4th kingdom, strong as iron, and will crush and break all the others. It will become a divided kingdom, with feet and toes, part iron and part baked clay. A mixture, partly strong and partly brittle. And it will not remain united any more than iron mixes with clay." In the time of those kings who are represented by the 10 toes on the feet of the statue, God will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. So keep in mind this image, and it has feet and toes of iron mixed with clay, something that doesn't mix well. When that happens, God will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. That is the vision of the rock cut out of the mountain, but not of human hands. A rock that broke the clay, the iron, the bronze, the silver, and the gold in pieces. Then he said to the king, "The great God has shown the king what will take place in the future." And the king fell prostrate. We men have trouble with the
Son.
Yeah. And the king fell prostrate before Daniel and paid him honor. And what are these kingdoms? So, again, keep the statue in mind. Babylon was the head of gold. So the Babylonian Empire from 605 to 539 BC. The breasts and arms of silver was the Medo-Persian. So we have Medes and the Persians, 2 arms, 539 to 331 BC. The belly and thighs of brass was Greece, 331 to 165 BC. The legs of iron was Rome, 168 BC to 476 AD. The feet of iron and clay were papal Rome and the modern nations of the European Union from 476 AD to the present time. Now let's talk about the development of Europe. Let's examine the feet with its 10 toes, made partly of iron and partly of clay. Got the picture? These feet have a connection to the old Roman Empire. The Romans ruled the world for 300 years and then divided into Eastern and Western empires. This is represented by the 2 legs of iron on the statue of Nebuchadnezzar's dream. The divided Roman Empire remained that way until 476 AD, when the Western division fell and it was dissolved into 10 nations, which ultimately formed the continent of Europe. The 10 toes, made of iron mixed with clay, represent those 10 nations. So here's the formation of Europe. The Huns, Germany. The Visigoths, Spain. The Franks, France. The Burgundians, Switzerland. The Lombards, Italy. The Anglo-Saxons, England. And I guess you could say even eventually the United States. The Suevi, Portugal. These are the 7 that still exist. The other 3, get this now, the other 3 have been uprooted. The Hurriuli, an early Germanic people originating out of Scandinavia, disappeared in the early 6th century AD by the Lombards who conquered Italy. Then you have the Ostrogoths, again Italy, and conquered by the Huns of Germany. And you have the Vandals, a Germanic tribe from out of Poland that ceased to exist after being defeated in a battle in North Africa by the Roman general Valerius in 534 AD. So, get the picture now. It was 10 tribal nation states that formed a territory known as Europe, with 7 of those nations remaining as part of the original 10. With me? Daniel prophesied, when the Antichrist comes to power, he shall subdue 3 kings. I think this is material that I've added to it. So if you're not finding this, it's because you shouldn't find it. Okay. I'm giving this prophecy from Daniel now. Daniel chapter 7, verse 24. Daniel prophesied, when the Antichrist comes to power, he shall subdue 3 kings. Now Daniel is, again, he's talking about the time of the Antichrist. He's not talking about the formation of Europe. But as a foreshadow of that prophecy that Daniel made. Not long after Europe was formed in the 6th century, 3 of the nation states were uprooted, leaving 7 nation states. Follow me? So you go back with the formation of Europe, 10 nations, or 10 nation states, so to speak, that kind of brought down the Roman Empire. They eventually formed Europe, but 3 of those got defeated, so only 7 are left. Now that was back about the 6th century. But what Daniel is talking about is something that is going to happen during the time of the tribulation. The Antichrist is going to have 10 kings, but 3 of the kings are not going to follow the leadership of the Antichrist. They are going to be defeated, leaving. If you take 3 from 10, you get, whoa, okay, good. Try to keep you with me here. So, So yet a 10-nation state initially formed Europe. That's the point. Initially formed Europe, representing the 10 toes of Nebuchadnezzar's statue. It was in March of 1957 at the Treaty of Rome that Rome gave birth to the European Economic Community, also known as the Common Market. 6 nations joined. So here's the first formation now of what has become the European Union. France, West Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. It was in April 1965 that the European Union was formed, and today consists of 27 member states. The territory covers these 27 member states. It was all once part of the ancient Roman Empire. Follow me? Now, there was 28. Remember one that dropped out, Brexit? We'll talk a little bit about that. I'm just wondering, remember Johnson has stepped down as the Prime Minister. Why did he step down? Because there's been a lot of pressure to rejoin the European Union. And he's not been supportive of that. Anyway, now get this. The flag of the European Union, get this picture now, consists of 12 yellow gold stars on a blue background, which is called a crown of stars. The flag is dedicated to Europa, the mythological wife of Zeus, the queen of heaven. Europa is not the first goddess to receive that title. It first belonged to Semiramis, the wife of Nimrod, who supernaturally gave birth to Tammuz or Baal, who became the incarnation of the sun. In fact, Tammuz is said to be, we're talking about mythology here, the incarnation, or reincarnation, I should say, the reincarnation of Nimrod. In other words, Nimrod and Tammuz can be the same person, but Tammuz is also referred to as Baal in the Old Testament. This goddess was worshipped by ancient Israel in the days of Jeremiah. We're talking about the Queen of Heaven now. The Israelites were burning incense to this Babylonian Queen of Heaven. They made the claim that she was meeting all their physical needs. Israel had so provoked and angered the Lord that he brought judgment on them and made their land desolate by sword and famine. He made it a curse for their worship of the queen. You see this in Jeremiah chapter 7 and again in chapter 44. Europa is little different from Semiramis, the original queen of heaven. Europe chose to fly a flag that would remind one of Semiramis, the original queen of heaven from Babylon. Strange, is it not, that the Catholic Church would refer to the Virgin Mary as the Queen of Heaven? The European Union, with her queen, could well be referred to in the book of Revelation. It was John the Apostle who wrote of a seven-headed scarlet beast with 10 horns that had a woman riding on its back. So we read that passage to you. The beast could well represent the European Union under a future leader called the Antichrist. Because the beast of the territory, the beast could represent territory, but could also represent the leader of that territory, the king of that territory. The 7 heads are 7 hills, John tells us. Now, we're going to say that that's Rome. But it also represents 7 kings. This can get confusing, so let me just help you here. On this beast, there are 7 heads. They are now identified as 7 hills and 7 kings. They are identified as a location, and they are identified as leaders. So when you look at Rome, Rome is the city of what? 7 hills. Okay. So we're going to identify Rome here. The 7 heads were 7 hills, Rome, and 7 kings. Now, John is writing in his day. Now, concerning these 7 kings, get this now, 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other is yet to come. The 5 that have fallen are Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece. All of these empires once ruled over the Jewish people or the Israelites. Follow me? That's why they're singled out. And one that is. Remember, John is writing now around 99 or 98, 80. So what was the empire ruling the world in that day? It was Rome. But notice, and there is one yet to come. And that's the kingdom of the Antichrist, whom we believe, and I'm going to try to establish this for you. I haven't yet, but we got a ways to go yet. Is going to come out of Europe. The 10 horns are 10 kings who have yet to receive a kingdom. This is Revelation chapter 17. So there are going to be 10 kings who have yet to receive a kingdom. That is a kingdom future to John's day. With me? Could it be that these 10 kings are associated with the 10 toes of Nebuchadnezzar's statue, which ultimately became Europe? Could it be that the 10 kings will come out of Europe to assist the Antichrist in ruling over the final world empire? And could that woman riding the beast be the queen of heaven? Concerning this future Antichrist kingdom, we refer to Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream of the statue with feet of iron mixed with clay. That's a good description of the EU. Those 27 nations are a mixture of iron and clay, a mixture of strength and weakness. Notice what Daniel says concerning it. That will not remain united any more than iron mixes with clay. So these 10 toes are very fragile. See? Remember Brexit, like we said. Britain, a member made of iron, dropped out of the EU in January of 2020. The EU is in deep trouble today. On September 13, 2017, EU President Jean-Claude Juncker said in a state address before European leaders, here I'm quoting him, the EU should hurry and without consent of voters, we're not even going to vote on this, for now, we can push a call to combine commissioners and council presidencies in a move that would transform the EU leadership and consolidate authority in a single figure who would campaign for the post. We're looking for a single figure now to rule over the EU. This is the first time since the fall of Rome that there has been a specific call for new leadership over the EU. In the year 2007, the Treaty of Lisbon spoke of, quote, the need to reform the structure of the EU and the way in which it functions and how decisions are taken. Were President Juncker and the delegation of the Treaty of Lisbon asking for a dictatorial leader like Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon? Sounds like it to me. What is happening in the EU that causes for a single leader to keep the whole thing together? This is what's going on right now. 1. Europe is facing a serious problem of Muslim immigration. In a 2019 survey, the majority of Europeans considered immigration a serious problem. 89% fear more Muslim terrorist attacks. And by the year 2085, 13 countries will be predominantly Muslim. European nations are divided over immigration. Influential EU leaders like former German Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany and Emmanuel Macron of France have encouraged immigration even against the will of their citizenry. They are very unpopular in their countries. Perhaps the reason why Merkel stepped down as Chancellor this year. While the EU national leaders have encouraged illegal immigration, Europe's eastern part, that's the part of Europe, not part of the European Union. So Europe's eastern part has refused has refused to open its borders. I'm talking about countries like Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Slovenia, and so forth. Now, Poland, of course, has done so temporarily to help out the Ukrainian people that are running for their lives, but generally their borders are closed. Europe as a whole continent is divided over illegal immigration. Number two, Europe is committing demographic suicide. They are systematically depopulating it in what British historian Niall Ferguson has called the greatest sustained reduction in European population since the Black Death of the 14th century, when an entire continent, healthier and wealthier and more secure than ever before, deliberately chooses sterility. The most basic cause for that must be in the realm of the human spirit, in a souring about the very mystery of being, he says. So, every nation in Europe today is not reproducing enough to keep their population growing. So, over a period of time, you see the Muslims are coming in, they're producing 8 children apiece. And you can see why the Muslims are going to take over Europe in time. Because these nations have open borders. Come on in! Woo. Europe has lost all respect for life. Consider the story of Charlie Gard, who was born in London with a rare disease. This was several years back. You might remember this story. Doctors in the United States agreed to do whatever they could to save the baby's life. But a UK High Court ruled that life support was to be removed and the offer of American doctors to assist was denied. Moreover, the European Court of Human Rights decided not to intervene with the hospital's decision. And furthermore, the British Supreme Court ruled that no life support be given to the baby, and neither would the baby be allowed to be transported to another country for treatment. But the irony of the whole thing is, many European nations have stricter abortion laws than many of our states, which includes California. We won't keep alive a baby that has been born, but then there are stricter rules on aborting in Europe than we have here in our country. Here's number 3. Europe, once a beacon of Christianity through the Protestant Reformation, has become a godless continent. If Denmark is a good example of Europe's spirituality, then only 3% go to church. Only 28% believe in God. Only 26% believe that Jesus is the Son of God. In Germany, only 10% say they believe in God with absolute certainty, while 50% are less certain. Strangely, the age group most, this is interesting, strangely, the age group most certain of God is the 30-year-olds and younger at 64%. It's just the opposite of what we have here in our day. The older people believe in God. It's the younger people that don't. In Europe, it's the other way around. Maybe there's some hope there. To best comprehend the godlessness of Europe, an Anglican church in London featured a fashion show with satanic figures modeling on the church altar. In England, even Satan can take center stage in church. And I got this article that was sent to me by Michelle from the Christian Broadcasting News. According to that, and we're just talking about the 11th of this month, the Church of England has gone on record saying it has, quote, no official definition of a woman. The church refused to define a woman as a woman. This reflects, the article says, the ongoing push by the LGBTQ activists on British politics and society, an agenda that is unfolding on a broad scale in the United States as well. Can you imagine a church saying, hey, we're not going to define who a woman is? I mean, Things have gone off the rocker. Arnold Toynbee, the British historian, he died in 1975, said this: the nations are ready, get this, to give the kingdoms of the world to any one man who will offer us a solution to our world's problems. Paul Henry Spake, who died in 1972, he was the first president of the UN General Assembly, former Prime Minister of Belgium, early planner of the European Common Market, and Secretary General of NATO, said this: we do not want another committee. We have too many already. What we want is a man of sufficient stature to hold the allegiance of all the people and to lift us up out of the economic morass into which we are sinking. Send us such a man, whether he be God or the devil, we will receive him. Now let's talk about the demonic developments out of Europe. Some of this we've talked about in previous classes, but I want to include that in what we're dealing with here, because I want you to see how evil Europe is, and how ripe Europe is to produce the Antichrist. So, European history is replete with demonic symbolisms and organizations that would certainly give reason for the people to welcome the Antichrist. This is most certainly true of Germany. Now, I want to make this clear. I am not saying with certainty that the Antichrist will be of German origin. I think he probably will be. I am not saying with certainty, but I am saying with greater certainty that he will come out of Europe and will rule from the seven-hilled city of Rome. Let's explore some of the evil that come out of Europe. We're going to talk about the Knights of Templar. I did this several months back. The Templars were first organized in 1118 after the First Crusade. After the Crusade, the Muslims came in, and so you have the Catholics coming. There's a war taking place in the Middle East over the possession of the Holy Land. Anyway, at the encouragement of the French knight Hugues de Payens, there should be an official monastic order for the safety of Catholic pilgrims visiting Jerusalem and for the protection of the Holy Sepulchre. This protection was needed from Muslim invaders going into the Holy Land. The Templars were supported by the Pope and formed by Catholic peasants from all over Europe. These peasants all took a vow of poverty. They were called Templars because they were given living quarters alongside where Solomon's temple once stood. In 1128, Pope Irenaeus II declared these peasants to be an army of God. So the Templars, they're an army of God. He knighted them, pardoned their debts. I don't know how he can do that. He's not God. He made them exempt from all taxes and absolved them from all sin. Catholics worldwide began donating money, land, buildings to the Templars until they became extremely wealthy. So wealthy, they started the first banking system and the first checkbooks. They established offices all over Europe, and anyone who wanted to visit the Holy Land would have to pay up front. So you want to take a trip to Israel, you pay up front. You pay to the Templars. Their money was put in Templar banks, and the people were issued a checkbook. So when they arrived in the Holy Land, they would pay for everything by check. However, a large percentage of the people never made the trip. They put up the money, they never made the trip. The money was never returned to them, which made the Templars all the wealthier. By the year 1307, they fell out of favor with the Catholic Church by denying, get this now, to say this was originally a Catholic organization. Now they deny the divinity of Christ. They are trampling and spitting on the cross as part of their initiation rites. They engaged in public homosexuality and worshiped the satanic idol Baphomet. Now Baphomet, I had a picture. I was going to bring it today. I drew it once for you, but it's a goat that has both male and female parts to it, see? So it's a bearded head of a goat. That was a symbol of Lucifer. Ugly, ugly. So they had clearly become part of a Luciferian secret society. So this all began out of Europe. Now notice next the Age of Enlightenment. The Enlightenment age went from 1715 to 1789. Was a European intellectual movement that came out of Germany that gained acceptance in the West as a world view that emphasized reason. Reason was based solely on empirical evidence. That is, if one can't see it, touch it, hear it, smell it, it doesn't exist. Since none of these senses can be used to prove the existence of God, you can't see him, you can't smell him, you can't touch him, Therefore, the Age of Enlightenment, people with reason would say God does not exist. The Age of Enlightenment is where man became the center of the universe and science became his God. This all started out of Europe. Notice the order of the Illuminati. On May of 1776, a Jesuit Roman Catholic priest, Adam Weishaupt, and professor of law at the University of Ingolstadt in the Bavarian part of Germany, founded the secret organization called the Illuminati. It was formed to oppose religious influence, so we're against religion, religious influence on society, and the abuse of power by the state that would prohibit debate and free speech. Weishaupt believed that society should no longer be ruled by religious virtues. The world bankers, like the Rothschild Foundation, financially got behind this secret society, as well as many other elite bankers, philosophers, and scientists who were all part of the Enlightenment movement. It was from the Rothschilds that the Illuminati perpetuated its most insidious scheme of all, a dynasty consisting of 13 distinct bloodlines of the world's wealthiest families who are all tied to the Masonic Lodge. These families are said to, quote, secretly control the world. I don't know that's true, but I'm telling you what I'm reading. When the Illuminati was abandoned by the Catholic hierarchy, it survives to this day, hidden in the Masonic Lodge of Freemasonry. According to Albert Pike. According to Albert Pike. Oh, get it right? That made it worse. I got water here. Swallowed wrong. Anyway, according to Albert Pike, former Supreme Grand Commander of the Supreme Council of Freemasonry. I'll get this out yet. Anyway, he writes the Bible on Freemasonry, and it's called Morals and Dogma. Well, my goodness, I haven't had this problem before. Anyway, here's what Pike writes in Morals and Dogma. Every Masonic lodge is a temple of religion. Masonry is the universal, eternal, immortal religion. And who is the God of Freemasonry? To belong to the Masons, you must believe in God. Which God, they don't care. The gods of all religions will lead you, they say, to the grand lodge in the sky. So they're universalists. If you just believe in God, but you'll get where you're supposed to go when you die. But who was the God of Albert Pike? He wrote on page 321 in Morals and Dogma. Lucifer, the light bearer. Strange and mysterious is the name given to the spirit of darkness. Lucifer, the son of the morning. It is he who bears the light. Doubt it not. If you get to it, become a 33-degree Mason, you will bow to Lucifer. And what are the present goals of the secret society hidden in Freemasonry and known in America as the Council of Foreign Relations? So this is, we're still talking about the Illuminati here. These goals stated come from a book that I read by James Jackson, The World's Most Dangerous Secret Societies. So I'm abbreviating here just to get the points. Number one, here's the goals of these secret societies. The establishment of a one world government, complete with a one world military and one centralized currency. It was David Rockefeller who wrote in memoirs, "The world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march toward a world government." 2, the establishment of a centralized bank controlling all financial transactions. 3, advanced microchip monitoring of citizens as a need for surveillance and control. We're there now. 4, an absolute proletarian state in which freedom of expression, get this, is prohibited and discussion of opinion will be stifled. This is a change from the initial goals of the Illuminati as set down by Adam Weishaupt. He wanted the debate, except he wanted to get rid of religion. He wanted a society that encouraged debate and free expression of ideas without government intervention. That was the initial intent behind the Illuminati. But here we are learning where cancel culture has come from. Understand that? It means you are limited in what you can say. I can't say what I'm saying today to you. If the proper people were here in this room, they would shut it down. The improper people. I meant the improper people. Okay. However, here's the next thing. We're talking about the demonic development out of Europe. So just catch you back. There's the Knights of Templar. We talked about them. We've talked about the Age of Enlightenment. We've talked about the Order of the Illuminati. All of this coming out of Europe, mainly Germany. Now I want to talk about Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. This will blow your mind. Hitler had a dream to rebuild Babylon and a desire for all Europe to become one nation. Yet one wonders how Germany, one of the most culturally advanced nations of its time, could embrace a man like Hitler. How could a nation steeped in Lutheranism, blessed with the world's highest concentration of scientists and educators, trained in rationalism, descend into the hell of the Nazi-driven support of Hitler? Germany was an economic disaster and the Jews were to blame. The German people longed for a great leader, our Führer, to lead them out of this morass that they were in, this financial difficulty. The masses cared more for the lofty ideals than practical solutions to their problems. At a critical moment in time, Hitler offered himself as that individual. As Henry Ford admiringly observed, Hitler stabilized the currency, eliminated unemployment, restocked the grocery shelves, and made trains run on time. Most Germans were ecstatic that their sense of natural pride had been restored, so much so that they were willing to overlook Hitler's abominable treatment of the Jews, gassing 6 million in what is called the Holocaust, the word meaning to offer Jewish sacrifices on the altar. That's the meaning of Holocaust, to offer Jewish sacrifices on the altar. Hitler accomplished what he did because he was a man driven by Satan. The Christian world at the time of Adolf Hitler thought he might be the Antichrist. During the Second World War, a man by the name of Dr. Keller took the word Hitler and gave a numerical value to his name. He did it like this. Let the letter A equal 100, B 101, C 102, D 103, and so forth. Then we can work out the following sum. H is 107, I is 108, T is 119, L is 111, E is 104, R is 117. Add it all together and you get 666. the number of the Antichrist. The Nuremberg trial concluded. It is impossible to understand Hitler's political plans unless one is familiar. This is so important that you get this. It is impossible to understand Hitler's political plans unless one is familiar with his basic beliefs and his convictions that there is a magic relationship, get this, a magic relationship between man and the universe. That's exactly when I'm going back to Nimrod, the worship of the sun, the moon, the stars, and so forth. Hitler was deeply involved in the occult and was out to conquer the world. In the world of the occult, there is what is called, get this now, the hollow earth. The belief is that in the center of the earth there is a hollow place occupied by spirit beings. And to make contact with them, you draw from their power. So in that part of the earth, there's this, what's called the hollow earth. There are these spirits, there are these beings with tremendous power. Hitler was convinced that there were advanced beings in the hollow of the earth with powers far beyond the human. In time, they planned to emerge out of the hollow earth and take over the world. That was what Hitler believed. These creatures were called the lords of the universe. And everybody living on earth had to ally themselves or get wiped out when they arrived. So you're either going to follow these evil spirits when they come out of the hollow of the earth, or you're going to be destroyed. Hitler determined he would be on their side when they arrived. Hitler unquestionably was one of the evilest persons to walk the earth and certainly was a type of Antichrist. Now, what I want to, this is not in your notes. I've added this. You'll get it in notes that Michelle will send. Because I want to pick up on this from the book of Revelation. In the book of Revelation, we read of demonic locusts coming from a bottomless pit that will be opened during the time of the Great Tribulation. This is from Revelation chapter 9. An angel with a key to the bottomless pit opened the pit. Remember this? Smoke arose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace, so that the sun and the air were darkened. Then out of the smoke locusts came upon the earth, and they were given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. These scorpion-like locusts were given authority to torment every man for 5 months, except those who had the seal of God on their foreheads. In those days, men will seek death and will not find it. In other words, there's such pain they want to die, but they can't die. The shape of the locusts was like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were crowns of something like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had a king. This is important now. They had a king over them named in Hebrew Abaddon. But in Greek it is the name Apollyon. Abaddon, Apollyon mean destroyer. I'm going to talk about them in just a bit again. I just don't want you to forget this. The locusts coming out of the bottomless pit, who have a ruler by the name of Abaddon. So there are those who believe the occult got the concept of this hollow earth and this powerful spirit beings from John's description of the demonic locust pouring out of the bottomless pit. So the occult movement now is just picking up on what the book of Revelation says and turning it into their own beliefs. Hitler believed in that bottomless pit and the powerful spirit beings that dwelt there. Furthermore, this is significant now. Furthermore, Hitler had two important historical pieces excavated and placed in the Pergamon Museum in Babylon. Anybody been to the Pergamon Museum in over here? Well, I've been there. If you ever get to Berlin, go there. Anyway, there is the seat of Satan there. You can see the seat of Satan from the ancient town of Pergamon. Remember, Pergamon was one of the 7 churches to which the Lord wrote the book of Revelation. One of the 7 churches. So the seat of Satan is there. John in the book of Revelation speaks of Pergamon, where Satan has his throne. And it was where Antipas, my faithful witness, was put to death, where Satan lives. That's Revelation 2, verse 13. Tertullian, an early church father, tells us that Antipas was martyred by being placed inside a brazen bull and roasted to death as the crowd watched the steam come out of the bull's eyes. The other historical piece Hitler had put in this museum was the Gate of Ishtar, from the ancient city of Babylon that was built by King Nebuchadnezzar. While these historical relics are fascinating to see, and I've seen them, they further demonstrate Hitler's attraction to things dedicated to Satan. So in the city of Berlin, Germany, you can go to this museum and see these two satanic pieces that Hitler brought there. Notice next the government buildings in Europe. So we've talked about the Knights of Templar, we've talked about the Age of Enlightenment, we've talked about the Order of the Illuminati, we've talked about Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. Now I want to talk about government buildings in Europe. All of this has to do with the demonic development that I see coming out of Europe. The $12 billion EU Parliament building in Strasbourg, Germany was built in the year 2000. It's patterned, get this, it's patterned after the Tower of Babel. It shows incompleteness at the top, and the guides will tell you that this building was designed in a modern form after the painting of the Tower of Babel by the Dutch artist Peter Bruegel, who's also known as the Elder. The EU Council building in Brussels, Belgium has a statue of the woman riding the beast. As already stated, is a symbol of Europe. The goddess Europa riding Zeus, the white bull. However, this whore riding the beast is represented in Revelation as the whore of Babylon riding the beast, who is also known as the Antichrist. Next is CERN. So we're talking about these demonic developments out of Europe. CERN. These initials in French stand for European Organization of Nuclear Research. CERN is located in Switzerland near the French border and not far from Geneva. The logo of CERN is three intertwined sixes. 6, 6, 6. 3 sixes intertwined. They have built the world's largest underground tunnel with a depth of 575 feet and 17 miles long. This tunnel is referred to as the gateway to the underworld. John in Revelation speaks of the angel of the bottomless pit. Notice his name was in Hebrew Abaddon, but in Greek also the name Apollyon. These words mean to perish or to bring to destruction. The angel of the bottomless pit is the angel of destruction. These scientists tend to play God, quote now, by recreating underground conditions immediately following the Big Bang, which gave birth to the universe millions of years ago. What they want to do underground is to create the Big Bang, which supposedly brought the universe into existence. So they're playing God there. Of course, this can only lead to destruction. Now get this. Outside of CERN facilities, is a statue of the goddess Shiva, which is a Hindu deity, who is the goddess of destruction. It is interesting that the goddess Shiva is associated with Apollyon. On June the 1st, 2016, there were grand opening ceremonies for the completion of this tunnel. As part of the ceremony, now follow me now, as part of the ceremony was a man dressed in a goat's head, representing Baphomet, who we talked about earlier. This individual that's got female parts and male parts and a bearded goat. It's a symbol of Satan in the occult. In the ceremony, the goat man dies, recovers from his fatal wound. He recovers from his fatal wound, is worshipped and crowned ruler of the world. That was a ceremony that took place at the dedication of CERN. Is that not a description of the coming Antichrist, whom the Bible says is going to be mortally wounded, healed, and then worshipped by all the people on earth? Revelation chapter 13. You see what they're imitating here? Well, we bring this to a close. Let's go back to Nebuchadnezzar's dream that Daniel interprets, and this will be short. It's the domination of the rock. So getting back to Nebuchadnezzar's dream, you will recall there was a stone cut out of a mountain without hands, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Remember that? Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain that filled the whole earth. That's Daniel chapter 2, beginning at verse 34. The question is, who is the rock? It's none other than Jesus Christ. So this is what the sovereign Lord says. See, I lay a stone in Zion, a tested stone, a precious cornerstone for a sure foundation, and the one who trusts will never be dismayed. The psalmist wrote, the stone the builders rejected has become the capstone. Paul said, that rock was Christ. So Europe is ready to receive the Antichrist. Europe kicked God out. Europe invited Babylon in. Europe exports satanic worship and a left secularist lifestyle. Europe promotes globalism. Europe is anti-Israel. Europe is but toes of iron and clay that will soon be smashed by the rock that will be cut out of a mountain without hands, and that rock will be a mountain that will cover the whole earth, and that rock is Jesus Christ, and the mountain is his kingdom come to earth. And next week we're going to have a full study on what the millennium is like when Christ rules and reigns. It comes from Isaiah chapter 60. You will want to come back for that, okay?